He said, Brother Hyles, he said, I've seen the day when I preached like you do it. I had the zeal you have, and I was after souls like you are, and I wanted to rest. And he said, Brother Hyles, I quit. I lost my zeal. I lost my fire. And that's the thing I've tried to keep. I'm 46. I've been preaching now 27 years almost. And I've tried to keep my zeal, and time again I've said when I walk in the pulpit, I could hardly lean up against the pulpit. I've said, Dear Lord, I don't ask you for a thing except let me have my zeal, my fire, my desire, my passion, my compassion, my fire. Don't let me lose it. And this old man said, tell them not to quit. And ladies and gentlemen, because we become the first largest Sunday school in this world, or were last year, doesn't give us any license to quit. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane that I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground, onward, forward, upward, never stopping, never quitting, always reaching high, always pressing forward, always reaching higher, always going forward, never going back, never stopping, till Jesus comes or death calls us all. Tell them not to stop. Tell them not to stop. I was stunned. It had been only 3 hours or less since the fellow had looked at me and said, it's too late for me. Let me say this morning to those of you who are not saved, if you've never yet received Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, if you have never taken time to say yes to God, let me plead with you, receive Him if you feel the slightest desire to be saved this morning. If there is the slightest touch of your heart this morning, if there's the slightest desire in your soul this morning to be saved, in God's name, you don't know how long that touch will be there. You don't know how long that desire will be there. Someday the heavenly dove shall lift and fly away to some other soul and heart. And you shall wander for the rest of your life saying, I waited too late. I waited too late. I've said this before here, but I could call 12 names at least right now, and probably 25, of people who once walked in this auditorium and felt conviction, and they cried, and they clogged the pew, and they trembled while I'd preach, and they were convicted, and tears that rolled down their cheeks. And they can walk through those doors now, and not the slightest twinge of conviction. They can sleep through a service, or they can yawn through a service, or look at their watch and wonder what's happened. What's happened? I know what's happened. The Spirit of God said, I'm not going to beg you forever. I'm not going to beg you forever. Let's suppose that Mr. Helton here had come, Mrs. Helton. When you met her, how old was she? I know she was blind when you married, but how old was she? About 20. Suppose Max had said, I want you to marry me. And she said, I will, but not now. Let me think about it. Now she wishes she had thought about it. Let me think about it. Max came back the next year and said, would you marry me now? And she said, no, I will. I plan to marry you someday, but not now. Max came back at 35 and said, would you marry me? She said, no, I want to be old enough to be sure I know what I'm doing. He comes back at 50. Would you marry me? No, but I'm going to someday. I just want to wait till I get the right feeling. You'll never get it from him. Right feeling. Comes back at 65 and says, would you marry me? She says, Hey, would you marry me? She said, let me turn my hearing aid up. I want to wait to be sure I know what I'm doing. You think Max is going to wait like that? Do you think Max is going to wait for 45 years till she makes up her mind? Do you think God in heaven, who gave His Son to die for you, and whose Son went to Calvary and shed His blood as your sacrifice, do you think God's going to hang around and say, please, and I beg you, and I beg you? No, sir. The day will come when the Bible says God looked down from heaven and laugh at your calamity and mock you. And you'll come and say, I want to be saved. And God will say, I want to be saved. Well, Lord, forgive me. Lord, forgive me. He'll laugh at you and mock at you. You're not going to trample under your feet the precious blood of Christ all your life and get by with it. In God's name, if you're not saved, run to Calvary. Don't wait. I was down in Texas last week before last preaching. Great big old husky fellow named Bobby Woods walked up to me and he said, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Bobby, I couldn't forget you." He said, "I thought I was going to kill you one day." The next day was baby day. It was a Saturday. The next day was baby day. We were having baby day at our church, and all the babies were going to come. And he said, "I had a little baby. Baby is now grown." He said, "You saw me over at Griffith Service Station," and said, "Bobby, won't you come to church tomorrow?" I wasn't saved then. I said, "No, I don't want to come to church." Big old guy, about the size of, oh man alive, better built than anybody up there, but big, wide sort of fella, husky. And he said, "No, I don't think I'm going to come." And he said, "You know what you said to me?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You said to me, I guess a man won't come to church on baby day is about as mean as the devil." And he said, "I almost slugged you." He said, "I guess it's about as mean as the devil. You turned around and walked off and stomped your foot." And he said, "Next morning I was there." He sat way back in the back on the right, way back in the back. And right in the middle of my sermon, I was preaching on "Don't wait, you may cross the line." And that fella got the idea he may not have to the end of the sermon to cross the line. He jumped up while I was preaching and took off down the aisle and said, "I want to get saved now." If I were you and I had the slightest desire in my heart to be saved, if there were one iota of conviction in my soul, I'd respond this morning. One of these days you'll come to that line after you cross. You'll never have a chance to be saved. Tell them not to wait. Tell them not to stop. I was at my motel room about to leave. One of the sword workers was coming to get me. Went to check out. I went to get some ice. Fellow walked up and he was a giveaway. Man was middle-aged. Said, "Dr. Hyles, I want to tell you how much I enjoyed your preaching." Said, "God called me to be a preacher 25 years ago. But I wanted to get out of school. I wanted to get me a job. I wanted to drive a new car. I wanted to have my fun. I was tired of study. And God called me to preach." And I said, "No, Lord, no." And I turned down the call of God, and He said, "I have been miserable." He said, "I had got my job, I got my car, I got my money." But He said, "I've been miserable for 25 years. And he began to cry, but he said, "Reverend, it's too late now. Or Dr. Hyles, it's too late now." He said, "I've got a wife and 7 kids." He said, "I've got to make a living." Oh, he said, "I preach in jails every once in a while." But he said, "I'm not happy. I'm not happy." And then he said, "Tell the young people to serve God now. Tell the young people to serve God now. My young friends, don't waste those years of your lives. Tell them not to serve. Tell them to serve God now." I've told my people this. You folks never heard it. I was in Texas. I was a young preacher. I had a tremendous desire to have all the famous folks I could into my church, and I had a fellow named Bill Mills came in. Bill was an ex-convict. He had been sentenced to die in the electric chair, and actually had sat in the chair, and they're about to kill him, but something happened that he was spared. And so he bought him an electric chair and got his old prison outfit and wore it around the country preaching and brought the electric chair right up on the platform. So I had Bill at our church and set the electric chair up here. He tried to get me to sit in it, but I wouldn't do it. I don't care if it's plugged in or not. I just wouldn't. There might be a little juice left in the last plug-in, and so I wouldn't do it. But, oh boy, I'll tell you what, I thought that's the greatest thing I heard. Here's a fella in the electric chair and was delivered, an ex-convict, and he told about how God delivered him. And I heard about Freddie Gage. Freddie Gage, a little hoodlum, been on dope down in Houston, Texas, and been as mean as the devil. Got delivered. He told his life story. Freddie came in and told about how he used to be on the needle, and God saved him. Man, I thought that's the greatest thing I'd ever heard in my life. I got Johnny Bisagno. He used to be pastor of First Baptist Church, Houston, Texas now. I brought him in. He used to be in the Stan Kenton Orchestra, a dance band. He came in and told about how he used to be in the dance band, and God delivered him. And I had a bunch of, I had murderers come in. Everybody had ever been mean as the devil. I had them in. Because I had a lot of folks mean as the devil now. And one day a little lady, one of the sweetest ladies we had in our church, came to me. And with a smile and yet a sobriety, she said, "Pastor, Would you give your life story someday? I said, me? I never was in a dance band. I never killed anybody. I've wanted to, but I never did. I never was in the electric chair.